Good morning. Thank you for joining us for the kickoff to the 2020 hurricane season. My name is Mark Sloan. I am the coordinator for the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management here in Harris County, Texas. Today, we will be joined by our meteorologists, the National Weather Service, as well as our good friend and colleague, the former director of the National Hurricane Center, Bill Reed, will take us through this morning's agenda. Hopefully you and your family will learn more about our risk and threats to tropical weather here on the Gulf Coast. And to get us started, I'm going to turn this over to Bill Reed to get us going this morning. Bill, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's my privilege to be here with you today. We've assembled some of the best professionals who really know what's going on in the hurricane business to discuss the issues facing us in 2020. We're going to start off with a panel of meteorologists, including Jeffry Evans, the meteorologist in charge at the Houston-Galveston National Weather Service, Travis Herzog, chief meteorologist at Channel 13, Cheetah Craft, meteorologist with KHOU, Frank Billingsley, chief meteorologist at KPRC, Jim Siebert, the chief meteorologist KRIV, Gaston Heredia from KXLN, Anthony Ortiz, chief meteorologist KXLN, and Carlos Robles, chief meteorologist at KTMD. After we do the panel discussion, we're going to have a talk on hurricane preparedness presented by Francisco Sanchez here at the Harris County Office of Emergency Management. Following Francisco, Jeff Lindner, Mr. Flood of Houston, will tell us about the flooding issues we face this day and age. Then we'll open it up for questions. So submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can before we're done. Okay, I'd like to bring up our first panelist, which will be Jeff Evans, and he's going to talk about the seasonal forecast. Take it away, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Bill, and good morning to everyone. Hurricane season's upon us. It's June 1st, so it's time to be talking hurricanes, thinking hurricanes, and we're 2 storms into our list already. Well, we're already going to jump to the C storm whenever the next storm evolves. We're watching an area down there in Central America right now that we're going to be watching this week. The Hurricane Center has about an 80% chance for that developing into a tropical depression or tropical storm over the next 5 days. So it's something we're going to watch obviously very carefully, but it does highlight that we are in the hurricane season, and now's the time to be thinking about that and making your plans. Looking at the season, right now we're expecting an above normal year. It's about a 90% chance of an above normal or near normal season. They're looking at the official forecast is 13 to 19 named storms. That's a tropical storm or a hurricane. Those are in the Atlantic Basin. So that's going to include any storm in the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to be watching that here over the next 6 months or so. So 13 to 19 named storms, about half of those they expect to be a hurricane strength, 6 to 10 hurricanes, with half of those 3 to 6 being major hurricanes. A major hurricane is a category 3 storm or greater. So that's what they look at: the water temperatures, the expected atmospheric conditions, and these are the things that kind of go into these large-scale seasonal forecasts. What these seasonal forecasts don't tell us is who's going to get hit, when is it going to come, how strong is it going to be. These are the factors that we have to kind of watch on a day-to-day basis. As you know, we live on the Gulf of Mexico. We live on the coast, so certainly we can get storms that develop just off the coast. We may not have a lot of notice. Hurricane Alicia, Hurricane Harvey, 2 big storms that impacted our area. Both of those formed in the Gulf of Mexico with just a few days notice before landfall. So really, this is the time when we emphasize right now to have your plans in place. If you're going to evacuate, where you're going to go, what are you going to be able to bring with you as you're able to prepare your property. A lot of people had COVID supply kits with what we've been dealing with the COVID virus. Certainly those could roll over into our disaster kits for the hurricanes. We emphasize, make sure you have those kits replenished if you started breaking back into those. The other thing about hurricanes is each storm is going to be different. Each tropical storm, every hurricane is going to bring different hazards and different magnitudes of different hazards. Some are going to bring a large storm surge, which is going to be that flooding kind of wave that will be pushed inland right along the coastal areas, as we saw with Hurricane Ike. Some storms are going to bring wind, as we saw with Alicia. Harvey was a rainstorm, and then also we can get tornadoes, as we saw with Carla and Harvey. So some storms are going to bring all the above. So when these storms come, this is what we, as meteorologists, as a team here that we're all on here, we're going to be trying to message out which of those hazards we're really expecting from a given storm. The science, with forecasting has improved significantly over the last 10, 20 years, but we still have a little bit more to go, and we know that. So we have to be prepared. You do not anticipate or do not expect to have a lot of notice. We're going to give you as much notice as we can, but there will be some storms that will come up, and we're just going to have to, like I said, with Alicia and Harvey, you may only have a couple days notice. So that's kind of the message I wanted to push forward, Bill, and I guess we can move on to the rest of the panelists.
Do I pick it up from here? Am I the first one? Or does somebody introduce?
I don't know. Go ahead, Cheetah. I guess we'll go with that.
Okay. All right. Okay. No problem. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm meteorologist Cheetah Craft. I work with KHOU, the local CBS affiliate. And I am here because our chief meteorologist was supposed to have the week off. But he is now going to work this week, of course, with what's the potential to happen. So with that being said, I never get this platform where I guess we're all out here. I really want to say thank you to all the meteorologists, the TV meteorologists, with our government agencies, so many of the officials that we have on today. I really want to say thank you so much for all the work that you've done in the past, and just the commitment and the dedication that you have to this city. So first and foremost, I really want to thank so many people on this panel. You're always a calm voice, and you've taught me so much. I've been here for almost 9 years, and I really appreciate that. Okay, but with that being said, we will dive right in. I am talking today about watches and warnings. And to me, this is the most important part when we're talking about any severe weather, and especially a tropical storm or a hurricane. To me, the easiest way to communicate to the public is a watch. You quickly see the area defined, and it's a quick visual, and it's easy to understand, and I think it's the best way to communicate that. However, I do want to show you, let's see here. Can everybody see this? Are we good? No, hold on, wait. Hold on 1 second. Let me get it. There we go, okay. What about now? Are we good? Can everybody see a graphic?
I can see it now.
Okay. All right. We good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So when we're talking about a watch and a warning, just quick takeaway, with a watch that's saying, hey, tropical storm or hurricane conditions are possible within the specified area. Again, you will see that highlighted in the area of concern. And then watches are usually issued 48 hours in advance. With a watch, the takeaway is to be prepared. You start thinking about what you need to do for you and your family to be prepared in the instance that then we would have a warning. So talking about a warning that would be issued for a tropical storm or a hurricane, warnings are typically issued 36 hours before the onset of conditions, and a warning is saying it is now time to take action. And I know that we're specifically talking today about watches and warnings pertaining to hurricane season, but I also wanted to show you just in general when we're talking about watches and warnings. Bear with me. Got it? Okay. In general, in Houston, we're tracking so much weather all the time. You know that. Be it a severe thunderstorm watch or a flash flood watch or tornado watch. And the takeaway here for anybody watching in the public, a watch is saying, hey, there's the risk of hazardous weather and you need to have a plan. A warning is saying it's immediate, It's imminent, it's occurring. So you need to take action now. I think this is also a great time to say, if any app, it doesn't matter what station or what agency that the app that you have, you always want to be able to get an alert on your phone or a text to say if there's a watch or a warning across the city. This is something that we're going to see on and off. So especially if you're new to the city, this is a great time to have your plan, of course, for hurricane season, but it's also just a great time in general to be prepared for weather in general. Let's see. Yes, I've got it. Okay. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, now we're back. All right, the graphics are over. So basically that's it. When it pertains to a watch or warning, I want to thank everyone who issues those, and of course, gives the information to us so then we can tell the public about that. And to me, a watch and warning is so critical when you're talking any severe weather, but especially when it's during hurricane season, because it's such a quick visual, it's such a quick takeaway, and I think it's easy to see. So are we taking questions or are we waiting to the end?
I think we're going to wait
Okay.
towards the end there. So I think Travis, you're up next, I believe.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for that, Cheetah. Thanks, Cheetah. So I'm here to talk to you about hurricane winds. And I want to thank all of you who are on this Zoom meeting today, because you're ready to get prepared. And as Jeff Evans talked about earlier, we might need to be prepared a little bit early this time around with what we're seeing trying to spin up in the Bay of Campeche. So one of the key defining characteristics of a hurricane is its wind speed. Whenever that low pressure center attains winds of 74 miles per hour, we have ourselves a hurricane. And those winds flow in a counterclockwise fashion around that giant area of low pressure. And so we define the category of a hurricane strength and damage potential based on the wind speed. It's called the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale. And it goes from category 1 to category 5. Category 1 is you've got your entry-level hurricane. You now have a hurricane. Category 5 is anything with winds over 157 miles per hour. And that's what we consider to cause catastrophic damage. Very difficult to build things that can survive category 5 wind intensities. Now, the strongest winds are in a ring around the eye of the storm. We call it the eye wall. You may have heard before that the center of the hurricane is perfectly calm, and it is. Because of the way hurricanes are structured, there's this broad area of sinking air that comes down in the middle to heat up the center part of the hurricane. And when you're inside the eye, it's very calm. But right around it is this raging river of air that we call the eye wall, and that's where you find the strongest winds that we measure in a hurricane. And that's why we're so concerned about knowing where that eye wall is going to make landfall, because that's the part that's going to experience the most extreme winds that a hurricane has to offer. Think back to Harvey 3 years ago. Harvey was an unusual hurricane. It was the strongest hurricane to make landfall in Texas since Carla in 1961. It was a category 4 with wind speeds of 130 miles per hour. And so for one, it was unusually strong. For two, it stopped. It came in and just meandered. And we haven't seen a hurricane that strong ever do that in recorded history. And so we had an unusual experience with that hurricane here in Southeast Texas. Rockport got the windstorm. That's where the eye made landfall. We did not get the windstorm part of it. We had winds gusting 50, 55 miles per hour, but we were in the outer rain bands. And so some of my colleagues later are going to talk to you about inland flooding and another water component related to the eye called the storm surge. But the last time that a hurricane made landfall where the eye went into the Houston-Galveston region was Hurricane Ike back in 2008, almost 12 years ago. I'll never forget it. My oldest son was 1 month old at the time. And when Ike came in as a category 2, now a very large category 2, it had 110 mile per hour winds, and it was 1 mile per hour shy of reaching category 3 designation. And it caused a massive power outage across the city of Houston. And so even though it wasn't the strongest hurricane we've ever observed in terms of wind speed, it really rearranged things around town. And for me personally, I had 100 feet of power line down in my backyard. And so I knew that I was not getting power back until I saw the lineman crews come in to restore that. And so we were without power for 14 days at the Herzog house. And so that's something we need to think about when it comes to a hurricane, is not only can you survive where you're sheltering, but are you prepared to live perhaps a few weeks without power in the event that a hurricane winds come and cause significant damage to the power grid. Now, to our own homes and property, we can mitigate the damage that hurricane winds cause based on how we build and how we reinforce buildings that already exist and maybe aren't built up to code. And one of the simplest things to do is to board up windows in advance of a hurricane. There's this myth that goes around that if you slightly open up the windows, it'll help equalize pressure in tornadoes and hurricanes. And that's actually the worst thing that you can do. You want your home to be as airtight as possible, because as soon as that wind and that pressure change finds one window to go through, it dramatically increases the chances that your roof is then going to blow off because of the pressure differential that's created. And so that's one thing that you can do to make sure that your home is as protected as possible, is protect those windows. It's not just about the windows breaking, it's about what happens if it breaks and what that air pressure change can do to the rest of the structure of your home. Now, when I give weather safety talks to my audiences, I find that most people are most terrified of the winds, and rightfully so. But did you know that the winds of a hurricane are not the deadliest part by a long shot? When you look at all the people that have perished in tropical storms and hurricanes, very sadly, about 10% have died from causes related to the winds. About 90% of people that die in hurricanes and tropical storms drown in the water. So the wind needs to be respected. We need to protect from it, absolutely. But we're drowning in storms more so than we are dying from winds. And that's why we say ahead of a storm, we run from the water, we hide from the wind. We do not issue evacuation orders based on hurricane wind speeds. We issue evacuation orders based on how far inland the water is going to go. And so we can survive the hurricane winds, we can shelter in place and be okay through the storm, but we have to let the folks that are on the coast get out first whenever there's hurricanes because of that threat from the water. And I believe next up is going to be my colleague, Frank Billingsley, that's going to talk to you more about the storm surge. But I hope that what you heard today about winds is both helpful and encouraging, that as much as we fear those strong winds because we're not used to them, that's one of the most survivable parts of a hurricane if we'll just shelter in an appropriate place. Thanks for your time. And I am actually off this week, like Cheetah's boss. So might cut out a little bit early. But if you see me pop up on TV later on this week, that means get ready, the storm is coming. But I'm going to try to hold off as much as I can. We've got an important family milestone to celebrate this week in the Herzog house. So thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Travis. Another thing about the wind and windows is do not tape your windows. It doesn't protect them, and it may make them more dangerous as there'll be larger pieces of glass if the wind blows them in. Okay, up next is Frank Billingsley. He's going to talk to us about the very serious hazard for our area, storm surge.
Got it there? I unmuted myself, so hopefully you can hear me. So you can, good. Thank you. Hi, Cheetah. I hardly ever see these people in person. Hi, Travis. Hello, everybody. Thank you for that. Travis is absolutely right about the wind. And the wind also creates what we call the intensity. And so basically the stronger the wind, the higher the intensity of the hurricane. That intensity creates that storm surge. Think of if you take your ceiling fan, if you can take your ceiling fan off of your ceiling and turn it and make it a big paddle wheel like a hurricane in the ocean, then think about putting that fan on high speed. It's going to create that much more water headed toward the shore. So the definition of surge is water that is heading toward land, it's going forward and it's going up. And so it surges upward. The perfect example is that if you have a 20-foot storm surge, then from where you're standing on dry land, that water is going to be 20 feet above you. The models now are able to take in astronomical tide to give that kind of a forecast. You may see a 6 to 8 surge because there may be some variation, but they're very good about trying to make the definition very simple. The storm surge forecast is how much water is going to be above dry land. So these models also take into consideration the inlets, the bays. They don't take in river flow or rain that's falling, which is another factor, and why we have to look at not only the heavy rainfall that comes with these storms, but also the surge. But they're very good about modeling. 90% accuracy with a storm surge model, what we call the slosh model. And Those are very easy to look online. So really 5 factors go into what kind of surge, how big the surge is going to be, and how dangerous it's going to be. One of them, as I said, is the intensity, the strength of the storm. That's part of it. How big is the storm? Ike, as Travis said, Ike was a 2 in terms of its wind, but it had a 21 foot storm surge at Eagle Pass. It had the storm surge of a 4 because it was a huge storm. By some measures, it was bigger than Katrina, but it was a very, very big storm. And again, that's like taking that ceiling fan, the bigger the blades, the more water that fan is going to push toward the shoreline. So the size really matters with a hurricane and its storm surge, and also the strength, and also the speed itself of the storm. If it's lumbering along slowly, then it can push more and more and more water. If it's moving quickly, maybe not so much. A couple other things that are really important. How's it coming at you? If this storm is coming straight toward the shoreline, then it's pushing that water straight toward the shoreline, as opposed to coming in at an angle. So a storm coming in at an angle is not quite the severity and the height of the storm surge. It's still going to be one. We saw Hurricane Charlie in 2004, came off of Cuba, went into Florida at an angle, category 4, but only an 8 foot storm surge. And that's why it came in at an angle. Then you had Ike, which came in straight toward us and was a category 2 with a 4 foot storm surge. I mean, a 20 foot storm surge, a category 4 storm surge. That's why, because it had so much direct impact as opposed to an angle. So that's one thing. When you look on the internet and you see these storms, how are they coming at us? Are they coming right at us, or are they coming at an angle? The other thing is, how far away are they? This is called fetch. Fetch is distance over water. And the farther they are away from us, obviously, the more water there is between that storm and us. And so it can push that much more water toward us. So it's important, again, with Ike, which came off of Cuba, Katrina came off of Florida, Rita through the Florida Keys, that's 800 miles of water that it's pushing in our direction. And as opposed to Alicia, which formed south of Louisiana and only had a 10 foot storm surge, even though it was a category 3 hurricane, it just didn't have that much fetch, not that much distance over water. So look at the fetch when you're looking on the internet, look at the angle of approach of the storm, and of course the intensity and the size. And then as Travis says, run from the water, hide from the wind. But look at those slosh models. That'll give you a great idea on the National Hurricane Center page of what kind of storm surge for your particular area is expected. We'll be doing that, obviously, also on the air. So if you're watching one of us, we'll have that same information. But you may want it at a certain time when you don't see it on TV, and you can get it on the National Hurricane Center slosh model page. It's very good. It's very detailed now, and it's for everybody. So you can see it all across the United States and the Bahamas and into the Pacific. So slosh is the slosh models have come such a long way, even since 2014. And the definition of surge has changed since Ike. They've taken it off of that Saffir-Simpson scale. That's just for wind now. The surge is in and of itself its own danger, its own forecast, and it's easy for us now to communicate what you can expect when these storms come your way. That's a little tip or two if you're looking on your own and looking at the angle of approach and just how far away this is. Bill?
Thank you very much, Frank. A very excellent description of what the challenge is with our area and storm surge. Everybody talks about spaghetti plots and weather model this, weather model that. It can get kind of confusing, and we have today, Jim Siebert is going to clarify some of the issues we have with tropical cyclone models.
All right, it's my pleasure to be with you guys today. And I have to admit, I love listening to my colleagues talk about storms and weather because you get a sense of the passion that we all have about covering these things. Not that we love hurricanes, but we love sharing information. And that's why I really like what we're doing today. All right, so hurricane models. I have to admit, I have definitely a love-hate relationship with hurricane models. For one thing, they've been getting better and better all the time. As our science gets better, as the data going into these models gets better, our modeling's getting better, which means the forecasts are getting better. But there's a few things that we always have to remember about modeling and a few things that we really have to be careful about, especially with social media, because models are not telling us exactly what's going to happen most of the time. They're giving us parameters of what we're working with. And so oftentimes, especially like, for example, we have this thing coming into the Gulf of Mexico this week, you'll have some models that will be going one way, you'll have models going another way. And then someone might, for example, take one of those models, put it on social media and say, this is going to happen. And that happens a lot, unfortunately, because models are kind of like when you go to the doctor and you're getting a physical. They take your temperature, they're going to take your blood pressure, they're going to take all kinds of things. So maybe you go to the doctor one time and they're taking your blood pressure and they say, wow, your blood pressure is really high. And you go, wow, well, maybe it's because I just ran a marathon. So sometimes in modeling, it's the same, where the models are looking at all this data, which is tremendous amounts of information, and there might be a piece missing at one of the particular runs of the models, which could greatly influence that model for that next output. So then you'll have a model that all of a sudden does something completely different, and then that makes everybody get really scared. So what we look for as meteorologists is consistency in the modeling over time. And of course, as we get closer and closer to the time where the storm might get to us, the modeling always gets better. But just remember this, that one model does not a hurricane or tropical storm make. And almost always, when we see modeling, it's going to change over time. The millions of pieces of data going into these models are going to be changed. They're going to change. It just has to. It's a very complicated thing. But what you want to look for, and the modeling that I really like, the models that I like more and more are consensus models, that are models that kind of take averages and take some of the other modeling and kind of looks at it and kind of compares, basically. And so as we get closer and closer to the time, you'll notice that spaghetti plot always tends to get closer. So if you're watching on television, when all of us, because we're all going to show the spaghetti plots, and when it looks like a bowl of spaghetti, then you know that none of us know what's going to happen. We just don't, because the modeling is just a spaghetti. It's a big bowl of spaghetti. But once you start seeing those models coming together and you see that they're in agreement a little bit more, your confidence, our confidence starts to rise, and then the forecasts get better. So with modeling, again, love-hate relationship, they are fantastic, and they are so much better now than 30 years ago when I started my career. It's amazing, and I think they'll just continue to get better. So that's my give and take on modeling.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Jim. Let's hope the models steer these storms somewhere different this year than here. Our most recent biggest hassle with tropical systems has been excessive rainfall. Today we got Gaston Heredia. He's going to talk about tropical rainfall and flooding.
Hi everyone. My name is Gaston Heredia. I'm working for KXLN Univision here in Houston. This is my second year here in Houston, and I'll be covering rainfall and flooding. I'm from Argentina, so I have a strong accent with my English, so I hope you understand. So let me get started. Houston, from my point of view, has become one of those cities that it's an example of flooding cases. No, we always have different kind of scenario where we end up getting flood. And now with the severe weather season, with the hurricane season that just started, and with the above normal forecast for this season, we might have a very good chance to get a scenario that was, as an example, Imelda last year, 2019. Imelda really hit Houston really hard over Galveston, Beaumont as well, 40 and plus inches of. And we as a weathermen, I think we have the obligation not only to inform our society, but also to educate them, informing in a sense that we have the advantage of kind of have a rough idea of what might happen during the few days and give you like an alert day of what changes might get to us so you can get prepared. But also to educate. Sometimes we tend to use different kind of word or terminology that many of our audience doesn't get. So sometimes we try to mention those names and try to explain it. For example, the watches and warnings. Sometimes people doesn't get the difference between those two. So Houston got flooded too often, no? Many reasons. I think one of the biggest is the urbanization. There's more construction. Over the past year, we have more roads, more housing, more civilization, more people moving to Houston. So that's required more housing. So less green areas for our city. And also, we are really near the coast. So we are pretty much at sea level, and that doesn't help us at all. Different kind of scenarios can derive in flooding. For example, you can have a single storm that can get you over a short period of time a lot of rain that can end up on flooding day, or you can have a really smooth storm over a long period of time that can get you also a flooding situation. For example, tropical cyclones that can flood the coast with storm surge or just heavy rain during a long period of time. June through October, November can be the more propense month throughout the year where we can see these cases because of the summer thunderstorms, because of the severe weather outbreak that we have here in our state. It's because it's more humid, it's because it's more hot, so the atmosphere can hold more water in the air, so it's more propense to give us more heavy rain. And this hurricane season, I hope we don't have this scenario, even though we're still tracking that situation over the Gulf of Mexico. So we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared. I think we have to pay more attention to the weather alerts. I think we have to pay more attention to. I think one of the best advices I can give you is just follow your most trustful weather anchor, and he will try to keep you informed. Try to recognize in which part of the city do you live. Is your area more propense to flood? Try to have a plan. Try to see if you're living in an area that more often with time get flooded consequently. I think you have to look for a better place to move in that case, and try to recognize the situation. If you see a flooding area, try to take a good decision at that moment. No, not try to go over the flooding area. Just try to look for a different way or different approach. I really hope that this season doesn't hit us, but also try to stay very alert during this season. And that's all I have for now. And I think my colleague Anthony Ortiz is going to be talking as well now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gaston. And you are correct. As important an issue as rainwater flooding is in this area, we wanted to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community also. Anthony Ortiz, topic will be lluvias and inundación.
Hello, Anthony Ortiz here. I am the meteorologist for Univision 45. So right now I'm going to say the same thing as Gaston, but for our Hispanic community here in Houston, we have a lot. So muy buenos días para aquellos que se comunican en español. Mi tema es lluvias e inundación. Como saben, las lluvias e inundaciones son un tema muy importante cuando hablamos aquí en el área de Houston. Y como sabemos, estamos en una temporada de huracanes que comienza hoy, pudiera ser más activa de lo normal, y de hecho ya tenemos un sistema que estamos vigilando, así que hay que estar bien atentos a esto de lluvias e inundaciones. Primero, debe conocer su área, qué está pasando o qué puede pasar, si es vulnerable a que tengamos inundaciones en esa zona, reconocer qué lugares, las calles si su condado, si su ciudad se inunda rápidamente, tener un plan de emergencia, de evacuación, dependiendo si se inunda rápidamente. Recuerde que no tiene que ser un huracán, una tormenta tropical, como para que se pueda inundar. Tan fácil como un sistema frontal, una tormenta aislada puede inundar su lugar y así pues usted verse afectado. Así que yo creo que es muy importante que tenga sus preparativos, y más cuando tenemos esta temporada de huracanes que ya comenzó en el día de hoy y que estamos próximos a, yo creo que la semana que viene, domingo, lunes, pudiéramos tener un sistema acercándose a nuestra región que pudiera dejar bastante precipitación. Así que eso hay que tenerlo en mente. ¿Qué les recomiendo? Bueno, lo que siempre se recomienda es no cruzar zonas inundadas. Si ve alguna, dése la vuelta, busque rutas alternas. Si ve que su área se está inundando muchísimo, hay que buscar un lugar alto, o sea, donde el agua no llegue. Rápidamente usted tiene que pensar rápido, sentido común, no esperar a que el agua llegue a donde usted para buscar hacer ese plan de emergencia o tomar ese plan de emergencia. Además de esto, yo les recomiendo, y que siempre se lo hemos dicho, tener una aseguranza en contra de inundaciones. No importa si su lugar no se inundó en Harvey, si el lugar no se inundó en Imelda. Recuerde que puede pasar algunas tormentas y no se inunde, pero llega el momento que cae agua sobre su zona cercana y es ahí cuando tenemos rápidamente alguna inundación. Así que es muy importante que ya con su familia tenga todos los preparativos para lo que pueda ocurrir en un evento como una tormenta, un huracán o tan simple como una inundación, recordando que las inundaciones son lo más que pues las personas lamentablemente pierden la vida en cuanto a estos sistemas. Así que nada, para la comunidad en español, siempre manténgase al tanto en su medio de preferencia y que sigan atentos a las redes sociales. That would be all for me.
Thank you very much. That is a very important information. Last person up on our panel is Carlos Robles from KTMD. He's going to talk about the other threat in the winds category in hurricanes, and that is tornadoes.
My name is Carlos Robles. I'm the Chief Meteorologist of Telemundo Houston, and it's a pleasure to be here with you guys, and it's a pleasure to see more and more every year Hispanic meteorologists working together to send this message for our community. Our community is growing and growing in Houston, and we need to share this kind of information because they are coming from places that they don't really know how to handle a hurricane. The subject that I need to take care today is about tornadoes. And when we talk about hurricanes, we think about most of the time about rain and wind, right? But we have to remember that they can generate tornadoes as well, especially when they are making landfall or when they are close to the coast. So these tornadoes embedded in this broad and big circulation of the tropical cyclones are usually weak and short-lived, but they could be strong and could cause some really damage. And we need to remember Harvey during 2007 here in Houston. We saw so many tornadoes, and we was more than 96 hours under a tornado watch. So these tornadoes are a big challenge for us as a meteorologist because their rotation is usually so little tiny, so small inside of this hurricane. So they are really hard to see on radar. So when we are watching a hurricane approaching to the coast, it's kind of difficult to see where are these little circulations located inside of the hurricane. So tornadoes are more common in the northeast quadrant of the tropical system. This is not new for us in Houston. As I said before, do you remember about Hurricane Harvey in 2017? So I want to share with you guys I think I can do this here now. Okay. I got an image. I don't know. I don't see it. Let's see. Well, I'm trying to share an image with you about all of the tornado. I believe that I can share it. I don't see it in my desktop. I don't know why. But the thing that I want to share with you, you can see me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the thing that I want to share with you is it's about all of the the tornado warning that we really faced during Harvey. And it was more than 150 tornado warnings that we really, the National Weather Service issued during that time. So it's kind of really difficult to see and to identify this little vortex. So we need to prepare also during a hurricane situation for tornadoes. And it's really important to you to know that where they are located. And remember that if you are in the northeast quadrant of the hurricane, you are more likely to see a lot of tornado warnings. So talking about Harvey, I can say that it was a huge challenge for me to communicate the tornado threat because we are dealing with a catastrophic flood in our city as well. So it was frustrating for me to tell the people to go outside, but at the same time telling the people, hey, you need to look for a place inside of your home where you can be protected because a tornado probably is coming to your area. So I always recommend that if we are in a possibility of getting another hurricane, you have to identify a safe place at home. And the best place in your home is a place that is surrounded by walls. So you need to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And if that's a place, a flood or something unexpected happens. So being prepared will help us face a hurricane and mitigate the damage that they can cause to our area. So it's important, and our message in Telemundo Houston and for all our Hispanic community is that you need to know and identify what are your risks. If you live in a place that it's really close to a bayou or a river, you need to know that probably this bay or this river, it will go over banks. So you need to know, okay, I'm at a risk of storm surge. I'm at a risk of probably high winds because I live really close to the coast. You need to know your risk, and this will allow you to respond better in case that a hurricane approach to our area. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And thanks to all our panelists for their presentations. We're getting lots of questions coming in from panelists, and I'll be forwarding them, presenting them to you after our next two speakers give their talk. We've heard a lot about the meteorology. We're going to shift gears now and talk about what it is you should be doing in order to be ready for hurricane season. To talk hurricane preparedness, we have Francisco Sanchez.
Great. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate everyone being on this call. The first official week of hurricane season, as you know, and we might have a named storm in the Gulf of Mexico. If that happens, it'll be our third named storm, and we are barely at June 1. So just a reminder that hurricane season and flood season is already here. So people to be attentive of that. We will watch that closely here, but it's just too early to tell. But again, just a reminder to stay informed as we go through this season. You should know that the Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is doing everything that we possibly can to keep you safe and informed. Everything we have done in prior hurricane seasons is equally important today. That said, we recognize that COVID-19 adds a new level of complexity to our hurricane planning. But it's not new to us. We've dealt with hurricane season before, and Ebola, and H1N1, and Zika. So we're used to this, and we're used to dealing with multiple threats. Every hurricane season, we have to plan and prepare for things like wildfire seasons, heat waves, flood, power outages, and a great many other things that we are susceptible to in Harris County. But it is going to be a community-wide and partner-wide response if we have to respond to a tropical threat this year. We are working with our local, state, federal, nonprofit, and community-based partners to make sure that we are ready and on guard for whatever we might face this year. There are some key elements that we're particularly focused on: evacuation, sheltering, transportation, mass care, and recovery. Those part of preparedness and response that are likely to bring a lot of people together. On evacuation, we are going to make those decisions based on storm surge. That is people that are the most susceptible to the deadliest part of the storm, typically along the coast. One thing that will not change is that staggered evacuations do work. If we find ourselves having to evacuate for surge, We will start with those communities along the coast, letting them get out first, followed by the communities behind them, and then moving further inland. So staggered evacuations work, making sure that we issue those evacuation orders in plenty of time. And we will certainly be making sure that in social distancing, we account for that timeline. Sheltering is obviously a question people are asking about because of the social distance requirements that are involved in that. Working with partners like the American Red Cross, making sure, also recognizing that Harris County is not a sheltering community for a storm. We may open shelters after the fact, but we don't want to open shelters because we don't know what those impacts will be before the storm actually gets here. When you go to a shelter, you can expect that you will be asked questions like, have you been exposed to somebody with COVID? Are you showing any symptoms? Have you traveled outside the state? And temperature checks. Those operations will have plenty of social distancing there. So we're making sure that we have the capacity for more shelters, working with our partners, doing mass care, and in recovery, where we have those recovery centers and open physical locations, we'll be working to make sure that those are safe for you as well. That's what we are doing. What can you do, especially for those of you that are new to Harris County and have not faced a traditional hurricane with us before? It remains the same, but you should be doing. Get a kit, make a plan, and stay informed. Obviously, we want to make sure that your kit has plenty of sanitation supplies, make sure you have batteries for flashlights, make sure that you have chargers for your devices. So if power goes out, you will have a way to stay tuned for the latest information. Making a plan, knowing whether you are in an evacuation zone is really important. Are you susceptible? Are you at risk of the storm surge, of the rain, of the flooding, of the winds, or all of those? That's critically important. And for your planning purposes, only evacuate if you are ordered to evacuate. Don't evacuate for a matter of convenience. That is really important right now as we grapple with COVID-19. Staying informed. Follow only trusted sources of information. There is a lot of information that's available on the internet. Some of it is great. Some of it isn't very trustworthy. And you should follow, so you can follow ReadyHarris. We're a trusted source, the National Weather Service. Any of the local news stations and meteorologists on this webinar are trusted sources. Follow multiple trusted sources to get that information. The more reliable and trusted and official information that you get, the safer you're going to be and the better prepared you will be for hurricane season. So you can sign up for alerts from ReadyHarris by going to the ReadyHarris website or following us on social media. Also, if you have disabled the wireless emergency alerts on your phone, those are that interesting and loud sound that you get for a weather alert. Make sure that those are enabled to get the latest information. So Harris County, it's doing its part of the response, but you need to do your part too. You are going to be the single most important factor in determining how safe you are for an event. So we're counting on you to do that. Have a safe hurricane season. Make sure to follow trusted sources of information and stay informed moving forward, especially this week. Thank you so much.
Very good information, Francisco. Our next speaker is going to fill us all in on what you need to know about the flood warning system and flooding in Harris County. It's Jeff Lindner.
All right, thanks, Bill. And as everybody knows, the number one hazard here in Southeast Texas and the Houston area is flooding. And so we get tropical storms and hurricanes from time to time, but we can have flooding any time of the year. So we can have, obviously, we've had flooding in May with the Memorial Day floods, and in April with the Tax Day floods. And if you go back, one of our biggest floods ever was in the month of December. And so it's not just tropical storms and hurricanes where we can get significant flooding, although they tend to be one of the aspects where we get some of the more widespread flooding. And so, you know, that's what we've had the last couple times we've had storms. Harvey was an inland rainfall and flood threat. Last year with Tropical Storm Imelda, again, inland rain and flood threat. But as has been mentioned before, a tropical storm and a hurricane is a multifaceted, multi-threat situation. And so you have to use all of the different threats per that storm and be very careful about drawing conclusions from past storms. So, you know, the next storm that comes our way, it's probably not going to be like Harvey. It's probably not going to be like Imelda. It's probably not going to be like Ike. It's going to be its own storm, and it's going to have its unique impacts that impact the area. And so just talking a little bit through the flooding, you know, we've been through this a lot. We hear a lot about flood insurance. We highly recommend all of the citizens in this area to have flood insurance. Only about a quarter, 25%, maybe 30% of the residents in Harris County have flood insurance. So that means, you know, upwards of of 70% of the folks in this county do not have flood insurance, and your homeowner's insurance does not protect against flooding. And so it's very important you have flood insurance. And we hear a lot of folks say, well, I'm not in a floodplain, or I've never flooded before. And around here, if you look at some of our past storms, Allison, Harvey, even Imelda, 50 to 60% of the homes that flood are not located within a floodplain. And that's because we're flat, and we have a lot of what we call sheet flow and ponding flooding in the urban area. So this is that street flooding we see from time to time. And if it gets high enough, if it keeps raining long enough, it can get into the homes. And a lot of our flooding comes from that. And those areas are not in what is considered a mapped floodplain. So even if you're not in a floodplain, if you've never flooded before, even if you didn't flood in Harvey, that does not mean you can't flood in a future storm. And we've seen some of that recently with folks in the Kingwood and Humble areas that didn't flood in Harvey and then actually flooded in Imelda. So it's very important to get the flood insurance. And of course, when we do have a storm, we highly recommend that folks use the flood warning system. The system is a network of gauges that is operated and maintained by the Harris County Flood Control District, and it is now Harris County and all of the surrounding counties around us. And the information you can get on there is the current rainfall and stage information in the creeks and the bayous and the rivers. And so it gives you some idea of how much rain has fallen at a particular location and how high the creeks and bayous are getting. And it also, we now have produced maps on this website where you can see how high the water is getting with respect to your home. You can type in your address and it'll show you what we call an inundation map. And it's just simply where the water is with respect to the creek or the bayou. That's an improvement we've made, along with the ability to create an account and sign up to get alerts delivered to your cell phone or your email. And so you can get whatever rainfall numbers you would like to get. We have some standard default ones, or you can put in what you want. And also the creek and bayou level information. And as Francisco just mentioned, that's some of the most important information that you can get during all of this is the value of information coming directly to you so you know what's happening. So it's really important that we make sure we follow the trusted weather sources, have your flood insurance, have your plan, and have a kit ready to go for this hurricane season. Bill?
Oh, thank you very much, Jeff. That's, well, as always, very important information. I'm so glad we have this service available to us living here, given how bad the threat is. Okay, I'm going to start forwarding some questions to different people here. One very important one, I think, that I'm going to put to Frank Billingsley is a question from Stephen on Twitter. What is an example of a hurricane that had a large storm surge in addition to what we saw with Ike?
Okay, Katrina. Katrina was a perfect example. And as it made the curve, and it had been pushing all of that water from the Florida Straits forward, and then it continued to push it all into Mississippi, and they really got the surge. I mean, the homes that had been there from Camille were sort of the benchmark. If you survived Camille in 1969, which also had a 20-foot storm surge, if you survived Camille, you're good to go. You're fine. And then Katrina came along with a 26 to 28-foot storm surge and said, no, you're not. And these were stone houses. You know, water, 1 cubic yard of water is 1,700 pounds. And so you're basically looking about your dishwasher. That's about maybe a little less than a cubic yard, but that's full of water. That's a huge amount of force coming in with a storm surge like that. But Katrina is an excellent example. The top winds, once it got to Biloxi, were I think 126 miles an hour. And in New Orleans, they were like 76 miles an hour. New Orleans had a flood. They didn't have a hurricane, let's face it. But Mississippi, Biloxi, Gulfport, Pascagoula, I was there for 2 years as the chief met at WLOX. I know it well, and I know those homes well. And that, I think Katrina is probably one of the best examples of that kind of surge. Now, just in recent memory, Florence off of Carolinas was a Category 4, and then by the time it really made a landfall, it was a Category 1. It pushed huge amounts of water into those rivers in the Carolinas and those inlets and canals. And whenever you push water into a concave coast, a bay, a canal, a bayou, it has nowhere to go but up. And if you've looked at Galveston Bay, you know it's full of concave coast and inlets and canals. Bill?
Very good examples. Two that come to mind to me for our area are Carla in 1961, which went into Matagorda Bay over 100 miles from Galveston. Yeah, we had up to 17 feet of water in Galveston Bay above normal. And of course, the worst disaster from a hurricane in American history was the 1900 storm. Most of the people died from storm surge there. A lot of questions on flood insurance. I'm going to turn it back to Jeff Lindner. Allison on Facebook wanted to know about where flood insurance can be purchased. Is it too late to have it? And a little bit on their other maximum reimbursement amounts that the flood insurance will cover.
Yeah, those are great questions. And, you contact your insurance agent, the same one you have your homeowner's insurance through, your car insurance through. They can put you in contact and get you the flood insurance. And as far as one important aspect with flood insurance, it does take 30 days to go into effect. So if you purchase it today, you're looking at the 1st of July before you're actually covered by it, and it has to be renewed every year. And I can't tell you the number of folks who had it that bought it after the tax day flood. They did not renew it in 2017, right before Harvey made landfall, and so they weren't covered. So 30 days to go into effect. It has to be renewed every year, and there are different variations of coverage. And so you can get maximum coverages for your particular location. And you can also get flood insurance for your contents. So this is your property belongings, your belongings inside a property. If you have a rented property, so if you have a rented house or an apartment, you can get flood insurance for your belongings that are inside of that structure.
Okay, very good. A fairly basic question here. I'm going to turn this over to Travis to answer. Alex from Facebook asked, what are the differences between what's called a tropical cyclone, a tropical depression, tropical storm, and hurricane? Sometimes people get confused on those.
That's a great question. Thanks for that, Alex. A tropical cyclone is referring to any tropical system, regardless of its intensity. So that could be a tropical depression, a tropical storm, a hurricane. It's a catch-all for any tropical weather system when you hear tropical cyclone. Then when you have a depression, storm, hurricane, those are all defined by their wind speeds, and tropical storm strength begins at 39 miles per hour. And you might also hear words like typhoon thrown out there, or just general cyclone. Those are just the same names for hurricanes. In the Western Pacific, which is the most active basin in the world for the most prolific developer of tropical weather systems, we call them typhoons. And if they attain a certain really intense speed, we call them super typhoons. And so those are kind of all different names really for the same thing. But for us here in America, we refer to storms in the Atlantic Basin and the East Pacific as depression, tropical storm, and hurricane. And all three of those are tropical cyclones. And a relatively new designation is a potential tropical cyclone and also post-tropical cyclone. The potential one is the newest one, and that's when the Hurricane Center now has the authority, before a storm has even developed, if they believe that it will develop into a tropical storm or hurricane and make landfall as such, they will start issuing advisories for what they call potential tropical cyclone, and then they number it based on the number of storms we've had so far this year. We could see a situation like that with what's developing right now, trying to in the Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico. And so that's another phrase. Think of that as a potential storm if you hear potential tropical cyclone.
Excellent, thanks. And a related question was the difference between a tropical storm watch and warning and a hurricane watch and warning. And it really is just the strength of the system. The winds are over 74 miles an hour, it'd be a hurricane watch or warning, and below that, it'd be a tropical storm. Another preparedness question, I think is very good. A lot of new people have moved here since Hurricane Ike, and even since Harvey. What is the advice that should be given to newcomers regarding what is potentially their first Houston hurricane season? And they asked if you could respond in English and Spanish. So Francisco, I think I'll give you the first crack at this.
Yeah, someone's telling me to unmute. So one of the things that's critically important is to know that every storm is different, no matter of size, category, all of those things. They could have different impacts to Houston. So if you haven't been in this area before, or you're new to tropical cyclones in general, follow the advice of your local emergency management officials. You could be subject to any number of things. Flooding from the rain, flooding from the bayou, storm surge, which is the most dangerous, and that'll be along the coast, and also wind damage. We haven't had one of those in a while. So this is the caveat, though, for people that have been here for some time, is Hurricane Harvey for us was a flood. It was a flood event. We have not had a traditional type of hurricane since Hurricane Ike. So make sure that you go back and you prepare through all of those things, from a kit to a plan and staying informed. And that third piece, being informed, is critically important. And whether you're here or not, I do want to make sure that we cover this. If you need any type of help evacuating, either for a medical condition or any type of issue, dial 211 to pre-register. You can, it's answered 24/7 by the United Way in multiple languages. All that information is confidential. And that's critically important, especially now in COVID. If you cannot afford to evacuate because of economic conditions, please call and register for 211. Es importante que nuestra comunidad esté preparado para la temporada de huracanes. Va a ser una temporada muy activa. Gana la información en punto ReadyHarris, atento a sus medios, atento a organizaciones aquí del condado, la ciudad y el estado para la información que para que tengan lo que necesita para sobrevivir un huracán o tormenta. Esta temporada va a ser muy activa. Y es importante que estén preparados a tener lo que necesita en un equipo para su casa, o si se necesita evacuar, que tenga un plan para si se va a quedar o si se tiene que evacuar, y hacer cómo va a ganar esta información que necesita para estar informados y estar seguros. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. And that's all the time we have for questions. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Mark Sloan for closing remarks.
Thank you, Bill. I want to say thank you to our moderator, Bill Reed. Appreciate you being here today, and all of our distinguished guests, our meteorologists, our flood control district, and our office, for giving you hopefully some information on being prepared for this year's hurricane season. It's crucial that we all have a plan. It's all the resources we need to take care of ourselves, our family, and our pet for the next 7 days, if we're impacted by a tropical event. But most importantly is staying informed. You heard from your favorite meteorologist today. You heard from your local emergency management agency. Stay informed. Know what our risks and threats are. At any given point in time, a system could develop that may impact our Texas coast. Thank you for joining us.